Hello and welcome to Week 11 of the Base on Balls podcast with the Johnny Lee Memorial League. I'm Ryan, joined alongside Jon and Tita for this Father's Day edition of the podcast. How are you guys doing today?
First off, Hen, I want to wish everyone in the league a very happy Father's Day. I am doing quite fantastic. It was a historic week for the Yard Goats, which I'll talk about in just a little bit, but definitely a fun week for me, and I'm excited for a new crew tonight. Should be fun, and hopefully we'll get the normal crew back next week, but it should be a fun time.
I'm doing good, guys. Ready to get after it, back on the podcast after a week off, and looking forward to trying to get win number 10 this upcoming week.
Yeah, definitely an exciting week, and we're going to jump straight into the last week or this week's scores. We'll start off with the match of the week with the Hartford Yard Goats and the Bowling Green Hot Rods. A blowout affair, a bit surprising. Jon Heite putting up 973 points. I don't know if that's a record, at least all time, but it's definitely the most we've seen this week, excluding that week one, which was like a combo week. And then Cody, only 606 points, a bit of a low week for him. And Jon, we'll start off with you since this was your matchup. I mean, what did you see, and how impressed were you with your team?
Yeah, first of all, Hen, I think I hit like low 900s like 4 or 5 weeks ago. So that was for the normal single week, like when it was just seven scoring periods or 7 matchups instead of that extended week. So, I mean, 973, unbelievable. Was not expecting this whatsoever. I'll start with Cody first. First of all, great game or great matchup, Cody. I know definitely was not the way he envisioned it. He got a ton of bad luck this week. I'll hit on it now. I mean, he had a ton of bats not perform for him. Vlad had only 19. Luis Arias, outside of one game, didn't really do much. Gunnar Henderson only had 26. Wander Franco only had 22. So a lot of the bats just weren't there like it usually is for Cody. And the pitching, I know Spencer Strider had a rough start, and then him and Hunter Brown lost potential 2-start weeks. So that's definitely was definitely going to hurt him. Sandy also only had -2 as well. So I figure this team, Cody's team, will probably hit about 800 plus next week. Just because when you usually have an underwhelming week, you usually respond pretty quickly. And with the team of Cody's caliber, I'm not worried. But as for my team, I want to just I wish I could give JT Real Muto and Shohei Ohtani big hugs. Real Muto, 140 points in a week as a catcher is like the craziest thing I've ever seen for a catcher in a fantasy league. And Shohei Ohtani had 145 as well. He had 6 homers. He's the best player in baseball. I had a bunch of guys step up. Mike Trout starting to catch fire. He had 54. Nolan Arenado had 2 homers today. Altuve's looked good. So, I mean, 629 points out of my bats. I don't know if I can replicate that again. I'll take it for this week against, my biggest matchup of the year to date. My pitching outside of Chris Bassett, who's feeble. The rest of the pitching was good this week. Blake Snell, Michael Wacha, 2 trades I've made really starting to pay off. Blake Snell had a 49-piece against his old team. Michael Wacha had 37 as well. Just very excited to see what my team did and the biggest spot of the season so far. And last thing I'll say before I turn it to you, Tita, is the thing that makes me most proud about this week is I was able to do this, obviously against, arguably the best team in the league, or most put-together team in the league. I didn't have my second best player in Aaron Judge. And, 3 of my big arms, Carlos Rodon, who hasn't pitched yet, Max Fried, and Eduardo Rodriguez have been on the IL. So not being able to do it with those, by doing it with those 3 on the IL, and having guys like Kikuchi have a start here and there, definitely was a little bit more sweet and a little bit more confident for me going forward. But again, GG's Cody. I'm sure this will not be the last time we face off each other. I'm assuming probably in the playoffs in some capacity. And, I don't imagine replicating 973, anytime soon, but I'll take it for this week, against a very, very good opponent.
Yeah, just looking at it from my point of view, JT Realmuto in the 7-day period, he got 140 points in 22 at-bats. So, he averaged I mean, if they played 7 games, I don't know how many games the Phillies played this week. He averaged 20 points a game. Olsen 51. He's been kind of home run, strikeout or walk, and of course Shohei. But you look at your arms outside of Bassett and Severino. The thing about Blake Snell is when he's on, he's on. And right now Blake Snell's on and not scary for the rest of the league. Cody got, I worry about, as a Braves fan, worry about Spencer Strider a little bit because he has been struggling quite a bit for the past couple of weeks. And you also look at Vlad. At what point, I'm going to pose a question. At what point do you hit the absolute panic button on Vlad? For being where he was, top 5-ish pick, top 15 pick, and then maybe a top 5 dynasty, top 10 dynasty asset. He's just not getting it done. And same with Austin Riley. As a Braves fan, Riley's streaky, but for the past almost a month, Riley's been cold. With the way Cody's team's set up, he's got a lot of depth, but when you got stars and studs like Riley and Guerrero, they need to play like studs, and that was kind of to me, the outcome of this was decided by, Jon Heite's studs played like studs, and Cody's studs, for the most part, didn't show up this week. And it's going to be interesting to see what Cody decides to do going forward. He has a ton of assets. I think he made some moves, and as with any owner, sometimes as you make a trade in the moment, it feels right. I think maybe Cody wishes he could have, one of those trades, 2 of those trades back, because in the long term, it may not have been the right decision. But there's no doubt in my mind, Cody's still one of the top teams in the league. There's no doubt he'll be in it when it all comes down to it. But I think he's going to have a big week with making moves, because I just see it happening for him. I think he's going to kind of retool on the fly and try to package some of the specs and some of his other guys for maybe an impact or 2 guy.
Yeah, I mean, kind of reiterating what some of you are saying. A stat I want to point out, honestly, me and John were talking about this before we got on. Jon Heite's bats outscored Cody's team in total this week. They had 629 points compared to 606 from Cody. JT Remington obviously did the heavy lifting there with 140. That cycle game. I forget what day it was. I don't know if it was Monday or Tuesday. That helped, obviously, but he still had a couple, double-digit performances as well to kind of boost that. But I mean, 629 points. I don't know if we'll really ever see that again in a 7-day matchup period. It's just, I mean, it's
stupid.
It's stupid. Yeah, I can't even describe it. And then, I mean, obviously, when you're dropping 973 points, it's kind of hard to win. I mean, he outscored the second highest scorer by almost 150 points. So anyone who would have played.
And wait, Hen, I want to say one more thing real quick before you finish that thought. I've had some, interesting conversations. I mean, it's basically obviously been with Bragton. Some people are displeased with how old my team is, but I know week in, week out, and Tita knows this because some of his arms are older and he knows what he's getting out of especially those top ones. So I know these dudes are going to rake. I know they're not going to rake for 629 every week, but sometimes older could be a little bit better because I know guys, that are this old and, sometimes, late 20s, early 30s, they're still in their primes until, I guess, mid-30s. So I think this shows that old isn't always a bad thing.
Yeah, maybe 30 is the new 20 after all. And then looking over towards Cody's team, I mean, obviously, this is a down week by standard, 600. Obviously this isn't the standard. But I do agree with Tita, I think, and we saw a bit of it earlier. I think we're going to see some retooling on Cody's front. We saw him make a couple of big trades we'll talk about later. And then looking at some of these bats, I mean, yeah, obviously you had 51 from Jonathan India, but if he's going to be if he's your highest scoring bat for a week, I think it's not a good sign. Obviously, India's a good player, but when you have an Austin Riley, a Vlad, a Sean Murphy, a Wander Franco, a Luis Robert, having Jonathan India as your highest bat is kind of an alarming sign. And then looking towards the pitching, Sandy Alcantara, I don't know what's up with him. I obviously traded him a couple of weeks ago. He had another brutal start against the Washington Nationals. Jack Flaherty had -12. Like you said before, Spencer Strider, only 14 points against Colorado. Kind of a bit iffy the past couple of weeks, so I'm not as concerned about him, obviously, but it is something to keep track of. But kind of go along here, we'll go to another tightly contested affair, another big matchup, especially when you're looking at playoff implications. The Nashville Sounds taking down the Norfolk Tide 7-17, 6-15. This was going down to a Sunday matchup. I know this was tied earlier today at some point. And Tito, we'll start off with you, obviously. And what were your overall thoughts on your team's performance?
Well, I felt pretty good most of the week with where I was and kind of where the matchup was headed. And I want to say around Friday, Paul really started to make up some ground. And Saturday, he made up some ground. And then this afternoon, I checked, and he had outscored me at one point 84-5 today, and he had ended up taking a 5-point lead. And I was like, oh man! And I'm sitting here looking at a Lance Lynn start away at the Mariners, and I'm just like, oh gosh. Paxton gets pushed back. He was on a Sunday night start. The rain out in Boston, Yankees game Saturday pushed him back to Monday. So I'm like, well, let's just roll the dice. And Lance Lynn comes out, turns back the clock, strikes out 16 guys in 7 innings, gets 41 points. And I'm like, wow. Looking at it, I think my bats kind of did okay. I mean, Diaz is kind of, calmed back down, kind of fell back to earth. Christian Walker, I think, had 82 points. So he did pretty well. Travis Darnall, I streamed him one day. He got me 28, so that was always good. So my bats, I think, scored 418. Paul's, I outscored about 108 there. But, Paul's pitching actually, which for me, 299 for my arms in a 12-start week is kind of the low end of what, my arms have been doing. And so Paul outscored me there. And, I really believe that Paul has a lot of really good ingredients to make a run for some of those final spots, because he has young talent. He has some top-end talent. He has some good specs. He's deep in his farm system. So, for me, I think Paul is still in there. To me, I think he, along with Hen's team, is going to be a sleeper team, I think, that can really make a run and catch teams in the playoffs and win a game, if not get hot and win the whole thing. So, if I'm, for Paul, his best baseball's ahead of him. Brian Wu looked great. So, I was happy with the win. Like I said, I think I got a little bit lucky with the 41 from Lance Lynn today. And but you know what? I'll take it and apologize for getting the W's.
Yeah, I mean, a lot. You talked a lot about it, Tita, but I'll start with your team first. There's so many guys, especially on your offense, that can really just wake up at a moment's notice. I know Schwarber had 64. Obviously he strikes out a lot, but if he's hitting home runs, that's all that matters. So having 64 from him, Christian Walker is a dog. I know Diamondback 82 points is crazy for 1 week, and obviously scoring 418 points for your bats was huge. But yeah, definitely interesting to see. I know Nathan Eovaldi, only 26, which I know I'm only saying only, but we've been so used to him having 35-plus point starts over the last couple of weeks. It was definitely going to come down to the wire. Paul's team really made that last stand like you talked about. Adley had 57. I know he sort of had a slower week last week, so good to see him back. We'll talk about the trade soon, but obviously he got Yoshida at some point, I think last week it was, or 2 weeks ago. He gave him 32, so that's going to be a piece for Paul to look going forward. He gave up Nolan Gorman, who really didn't do much for him anyway, so that was interesting. Again, he traded Jose Barrios as well, who gave him that 41-point start as well. Taj Bradley, former Beach Dog, and I know you have a lot of comments on Taj Bradley, still gave him a good start with 24 and that very strange start he had earlier in the week. But like you mentioned, Paul has a lot of pieces. He's got a ton of assets, very similar to Cody, where he could turn this team into any direction he wants it to go. Just with the young talent as well. He has Bryce Elder now. Mackenzie Gore is young. I think he had an okay start, but again, the potential is there. There's a lot of good pieces that Paul can work with. He's a guy you don't want to play in the playoffs if he gets in. I know I have to play him next week, so did not really have the greatest time last time I played Paul, so we'll see about that. With Tita, the Sounds are rolling. Outside of that, I think the tie was last week. I expect Tita to rattle off some wins now. After that, Adolis Garcia is still a dog. I know he struck out 10 times, but still was effective relatively at the plate. Dansby Swanson as well has really started to turn around after a slow week last week. So the Sounds, I think, are really going to be a force to be reckoned with. Another team you will not want to face in the playoffs. I think Tita's a game and a half back for me in the division. So even though I haven't lost a game yet, it doesn't really mean a whole lot because Tita's keeping pace with me. And I know I face off against Tita too soon, which, again, I am not looking forward to. But both teams are on the right track and should make for an exciting rest of the season.
Yeah, and something I kind of actually just noticed when I was looking at the standings, because obviously, you're looking at, there's still a decent amount of weeks left, but as we're looking towards the back half of this season, you're starting to see which teams are jostling for which playoff positioning. With the win, Tita actually overtook Cody for the second seed, so that tie really kind of helped him out. Sitting at 9-1-1 has that half game advantage over Cody. Obviously, the lead isn't safe; anything can happen. But just something to keep note of, that the tie actually could maybe help out Tita in a potential tiebreaker situation. But looking at this matchup, obviously, the bats were clicking for Tita, as we were saying. But Kyle Schwarber had an excellent performance. It seems like every time the month of June comes around, this guy just loves mashing the baseball. So he obviously did well. And then looking over towards some of the other big players, Christian Walker, you said, and we're talking about Paul's team specifically. Going to Paul's team, I forget who mentioned it, but he is in an interesting situation where I think he still has over 50 prospects that he can work with if he truly wants to make a push this year. He definitely has something that he can work with in his arsenal. And yeah, a couple of, it's a closer matchup than maybe the score would indicate, especially that last day. But, this is a huge one for Tita. Paul now slides to the 7th seed. So, that's the seed that obviously gets you in the playoffs, and you want to get somewhere higher because you probably would play either Cody or Tita in that round 1 matchup, and then things can get a little weird after that as well. And then another player I want to shout out for Tita's team who, I don't know what's been happening with him, and I vividly remember this, but Tyler A. Wells, just absolute animal. I remember I had him on my team, and when I was still over the roster spots at the beginning of the year, I tried getting a worst or two for him. Couldn't get anything, and he's almost a 25 point per game pitcher. His 3rd straight start with over 30. Shout out Tita for just finding that guy. That's definitely one of the moves where I'm like, wow, I wish I would have had that, or wish I would have played out differently. But I don't think anyone would have expected Tyler A. Wells to kind of dominate like he's been. But that's how you win championships, is by winning on the margins. And that was a big pickup for Tita, who's still been balling for him. So going to our next matchup, myself, Clearwater Beach Dogs take down the Oklahoma City Dodgers. Chad 826 to 481. Obviously this is my matchup, so I'll get things started. Obviously dominant performance by my team, 2nd most points in the week, but I kind of wish I low-key did this matchup, had this scoring output next week against Tita. Obviously, we're going to look into it, the preview, but I feel like this is a kind of a wasted performance because I almost doubled Chad's score, and especially coming into this next stretch for my team. Wasting an 800-point performance like this against a team who I could have easily beaten and not against someone who I'm trying to jostle for playoff position. I know it sounds a bit greedy, but I just kind of wish it came against another opponent. But looking at some of these players, Lane Thomas, absolute animal, 58 points this week. Kyle Tucker rebounding a bit. He's been kind of up and down this entire year. He went 10 for 22 this week, 67 points. Corbin Carroll, another dominant week. Orlando Arcia, shout out him, 63 points. Ever since it was Vaughn Grisham kind of got sent to the minors, I remember picking him up like first or second week, and he's been such a great spot start. Now with Max Muncy out, he's been really kind of carrying that load, the second base spot. But 494 points from the bats would have outscored Chad's entire team. And then looking at the pitching, 2 solid performances from Logan Webb and Zach Wheeler. Michael Tonkin, I don't know how you say his name, from the Braves. I remember I waiver wire picked him up. He had 1 outing, but he had 29 points, pitched 3 1/3 innings of relief, picking up the win against the Rockies. That was kind of nice. And Andrew Abbott, Beach Dog debut, got the call up, 28 points. So very satisfied with my team's performance. John, if you want to talk about my matchup real quick.
Yeah, so I think a big storyline for you, Hen, throughout the season is there's been some weeks where the team has been in God mode. I think this week was a representation of that this is easily a team that could score 750 to 800 points plus in a given week. I know there's been some inconsistencies here and there, but when your team is firing on all cylinders, it's almost borderline impossible to beat, in my opinion, with the way you've constructed it. Outside of that, I know J-Ram had a really rough start to the season, at least offensively. Well, he stopped any sort of doubt with that recently. I think he's the first-ranked third baseman, 8th overall batter. He had 53 this week. 2 guys like him and Tucker, like you mentioned, turning it around. Corbin Carroll is just on another planet right now. But even with, Juan Soto, I guess 34 is okay, but I think, he'll do better than that in future weeks. You mentioned Lane Thomas, right? Tommy Pham, we talked about that off air. Your stream game is getting really good. I think a lot of people in this league are really trying to figure out the stream component of this. I'm taking some notes from Bry a little bit, and I think you got some good value there. In terms of the pitching, that's where I really think your team has gotten a lot scarier. It's so early, and I know he's a lot older, but, the Wheeler, Sandy deal, Wheeler, 67, and 2 great starts against the Diamondbacks, and then obviously the A's, who were the A's, but 67 is nothing to scoff about, and, I know Sandy's got a lot of time left to try to turn things around, but so far looks good. Logan Webb at 61, that was another good acquisition. Logan Webb is a dog, and he's relatively young, so definitely good. But again, it's very impressive to see you do this with Mitch Keller only having 7, Luis Castillo only having 11, Sonny Gray's really slowed down. He only had 7. Another guy I noticed from your team that's just a dog and probably going to get traded soon in real life is Alexis Diaz of the Reds. He gave you 35 as a reliever. Actually, maybe they won't trade him because the Reds are good now and just, beat the Astros up. But that's been a dog for you. I know you called up Jordan Walker. He had 53 in your minors, so already adding to your loaded bats that I know are missing Jordan and Max Muncy. So scary sight to see. Your team is going to be rolling, I think, in the near future. In terms of Chad, 481, you got some big-time performance out of a couple of guys. I know the talk of our main Chad has been Jake Berger, who's got 16 home runs. He had a pretty solid week. He had 3 dingers. Austin Hayes at 56. He was actually a former Yargo, too, now that I think about it. He had a very solid week on a very good Orioles team. Kybert Ruiz is really starting to put it together as a catcher. He had 30, obviously as a catcher. Some decent pitch performances. I know, again, it's harder for teams to get any sort of pitching in this league. But he's got a ton of prospects. He's got all the picks. Chad's going to be controlling the board probably for the next 3 to 5 years plus in terms of the youth he's accumulated. So 2 teams in different directions, but I think, some positive signs from both. And I'm excited to see what both these teams do next week.
Yeah, just echoing the guy, Hen's team gets 826 with no Jordan, no Muncy. I'm really not looking forward to playing him this next week at all, just because it's former Beach Dog, former Sound, back to Beach Dog, Andrew Abbott has been looking really, really, really good. I may regret that trade. But the thing that Hen has is he has a bunch of closers. And if you're not careful on a week, they can accumulate a ton of points on you. So, I mean, like I said, I think Hen is one of these sleeper teams that we have in this league. I really believe his record doesn't reflect his team. And, once he gets all his pieces back, it's a team that you don't want to see in a regular season, but you really don't want to see it in a 1 week winner-take-all playoff scenario because he has the firepower in the bats, and now with his arms, I just think his team is very underrated, and I think it would not surprise me if Hen's team is playing in the championship game in this league here in a month or so. A few months. So Chad is a builder. He is building. He makes shrewd moves. 343 from his bats is not bad at all. He's got some bats to move. Austin Hayes is very underrated in this league. Just not a sexy name, but he just puts up points. Leody Taveras, hits 75. He's the ninth hitter in the Texas lineup, and he's just doing work. And then, like I said, Chad, I know his big focus is he's got the arms coming up. I'm sure he's probably going to have at least two of the top three picks in this upcoming draft. So you're probably looking at Paul Scanes and Dylan Cruz. And, you add that plus all of his other picks and plus what he already has. And Chad's going to be able to do a lot, whatever he wants to do here in the next 12 months to build this team how he wants to. But it's just a contender and Hen against a rebuilder and Chad, and it kind of went how you expected it to go. But both these teams have bright futures.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Leody Taveras. I forgot to mention him just looking over at 75 points. I mean, was the highest scoring batter out of both teams this week. And, John, you mentioned, I wanted to touch on, obviously I put it out, I think like an hour ago at this point, of calling up Jordan Walker. I was hesitant on calling him up. I was thinking of calling him up this week, but obviously I wanted to wait because he had that rough start to start the season, and I didn't want to lose a prospect slot, so I wanted to wait out another week. He's been mashing the ball ever since he's really ever been called back up, and I think in a matchup against Tita, I wanted to make sure I had him in my arsenal, my toolkit, and I think he's here to stay. I think he's really hitting his stride. Almost a 6-point bat now, even with kind of that slow start. So I thought it was an appropriate time to call him up. I think he's going to be in the show for a while, especially with the way the Cardinals are. I think they're probably going to be sellers at the deadline, which would only open up more opportunities for Jordan Walker. So hopefully that will pay dividends. But shifting over to the next matchup, we have the Bismarck Larks against the El Paso Chihuahuas. Bismarck getting back on the win column. Had been a while for Bracton. He wins 645 to 495. John, I'm going to start things with you. Obviously, I think both of us have been pretty critical of Bracton and his team, but he did get the dub in this week, and he's still in playoff contention. He's still fighting for that last playoff spot, and this was a huge win, gaining that game on Paul. But John, what were your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, time to be fair towards Bracton. I mean, good performance by him, 645. I know that might be his highest of the season, or if not, one of his highest scoring totals. So, pretty big week for him. Took down Smell, who really put him on edge, I think, for the last 3 or 4 days of the matchup, or at least 3 days. Bracton really started to pull away. But yeah, I mean, let's start with Bracton first of all. 645 had some big performances. The Christopher Morel trade has looked good for him. This week alone, he did really, really well. You just look through this team that Bracton has been able to assemble, really as of late. Morel had 56. Josh Jung had 36. A bit of a slow week for Ellie, who's starting to slow down. And get acclimated to big league life. Again, he's a rookie. It's going to take him a while to get used to things. I thought it was funny, and I guess I will continue the trend of Bracton's one positive thing to say about the team, even though there's multiple positive things. TJ Friedel had 38 points. That was one less than Julio Rodriguez. So big shout out TJ Friedel. I thought that was pretty funny with all the hype that Julio Rodriguez has been getting lately. But I think the big difference, again, is his pitching. I still don't think his bats, at least right now, are all there yet. He's still got some guys like Andrew McCutcheon starting, but Shane McClanahan is the best pitcher in baseball right now. He has him. He had 34. Bryce Miller had a massive week. Wow, he had 75, 2 good starts. Bobby Miller only had -3, so not so great. Sandoval obviously had that fluke start, so I'm not going to talk about him. But Ranger Suarez has been good for him lately. He's had 2 30-point starts. And lastly, Shane Bieber only had 7. He's washed, but that's only my opinion. But Bismarck Larks are starting to get some buzz here. I know this is a good win. We'll see what he does in the upcoming weeks. But, the pieces are starting to get there. I'm sure there'll be a lot more trades in the near future for Bracton as he's trying to turn Bismarck into a potential playoff team, even though they're all young and in minors. In terms of smell, he had some big performances out of Spencer Steer this week. He's been an absolute dog lately. 25th overall bat. He had 46. A part of that really lethal Cincinnati Reds team. Justin Turner, who had that huge game against the Yankees, he ended with 67. So some potential piece to sell off for maybe some youth. If he chooses to go that way. Dylan Cease, starting to get a little bit more consistent. He had a 10 strikeout performance at 25. Domingo Germán had a rough start, so that hurt him. Connor Seabold as well. So a couple of pitching performances go his way. Maybe this could have been closer / maybe a potential smell victory. But, again, credit to Bracton. He got the dub, and we'll see if he can replicate this next week.
Yeah, looking at Bracton's team, it's kind of changed in the last 2 weeks, big time. Getting J-Rod, helps. I think Ellie's going to be what he is. He's electric, but he is going to be a high strikeout, in my opinion, 230 hitter. But he's going to hit home runs, steal bases. He's electric. Chris Morrell, he has finally woken up. I owned him for about 2.5 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. He did absolutely nothing. And it's good to see that, he's alive for Bracton now. Smell, looking at his team, he's still in that building phase where he's got almost every draft pick in the first round in 2025. He's got a ton of prospects. He's waving the white flag for this year, but I think he's looking more towards next year and 2025 as well with his team. But he's got some pieces like Justin Turner that I think for the rest of this year can really help a contender. If he decides to move Cease, it looks like Cease has got his strikeout stuff back. I think going back to Bracton's team, looking at Bieber, and I think Bieber is, unless he continues, he's doing better, but he's got to have his strikeouts. He's that kind of guy where if he can get his K through 9 numbers back up, I think he is a top 15, 20 pitcher. If he doesn't, I think he's more starting pitcher 3, starting pitcher 4-ish. But it looks like to me, just looking at Bracton's roster construction, he's going to need probably to make a depth offer, a depth trade, and not bad depth, but he's going to, in my opinion, he's just going to have to move somebody. Now, I wouldn't move McClanahan. I probably wouldn't move J-Rod. But, I could see him moving one of those guys to get some good quality depth. But I think Bracton's all in for this year. He's got the challenge for a playoff spot, and Smell is exactly where he wants to be and is rebuilding mode. So I look forward to seeing what both these teams do the rest of the year.
Yeah, going back to the thing Bracton says, the one positive for the week, I think the one positive has to be he won. It'd been a month since he had last won. Me and John and Bracton were all still in school, and the Larks finally got on the win column. with, like you said, an impressive 645, which looking at it, I was looking back because I was curious on how long it had been. The last time he scored this amount of points was week 3 against Dave, where he finished with 657. So it's been a while since Bracton's, gotten in this kind of scoring total. But looking at some of his big players, obviously Chris Morrell came up huge. J-Rod had a very solid week. Lamont Wade Jr., 50 points in 21 at-bats. Just, that's some big stuff going on there. And then, like you guys said, as much as we like to rag on Bracton's pitching has improved. Bryce Miller with a beautiful bounce-back week, 2 starts, 75 points. Just absolutely wonderful stuff. I know a couple people on this podcast have been kind of critical of Bryce Miller, but, if sometimes you're going to get the good with the bad. You're going to get the 35-point start with the negative starts, which it depends on how you feel about that. But two great starts against, 2 not great offenses, so maybe he's more of a matchup-dependent pitcher, but good stuff from him. Ranger Suarez has been absolutely killing it ever since he's come back. And then he got a couple of good streams as well. Trevor Stephan got, 12 points, Lucas Sims. But then looking over towards Smell's team, like you guys said, he's a rebuilding team. I feel like we've been saying this for a while, and he's kind of moving the course. Julio Teheran, another great start. Craig Kimbrell, 32 out of the bullpen. Another name potentially to look out for if a team wants to, a more consistent reliever option. And then, that's kind of it for that matchup. So we'll head over to the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, some may say, for Bry against the Amarillo Sod Poodles. Bry takes the win, 7-8-4 to 3-8-4. Tita, give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Well, just looking, I was actually surprised at how big a gap this was. I thought Connor's team would put up a fight and make this matchup semi-close, but when Ozzie Albies is on a heater like he is right now, he gets 84 points this week. I've seen probably all of his home runs, and it's kind of like the whole Braves team is on fire right now. Esteury Ruiz gets 47. Bride just plays so many people. He gets 454 out of his bats, and Connor got 278. It comes down to pitching, just like we always talk about. And it's something when I joined the league this year, I had discussed before the year started, and people were like, saying, hey, starting pitching is where it's at. And now, you kind of look at it, and all of it rings true. You either have starting pitching or you don't. And if you don't, you have to go get it. And right now, the teams who have starting pitching are winning. And the teams who do not have starting pitching aren't. It's as simple as that. 330 to 106. Bry's got a ton of starting pitching depth. Majors, minors, you name it. Got traded just Joe Musgrove this week, and he puts up 47. Freddie Peralta had 33 for him. Maybe finally, after 17 trades back and forth between him and Bracton, Peralta going all over the place, maybe he's finally settled in. A guy that I really keep my eye on for Connor, though, is for trade bait is, Taijuan Walker. He puts up 43 in a start against Oakland. I think he's a matchups guy. I don't think he's a no doubt put him in there, let him ride every week, every game starter. But in those matchups, he can put up some big points. It's just for Connor, it's about trying to continue to accumulate as many assets as he can and move assets. I get exactly what he's doing. He's acquiring guys. He's trying to flip guys for more than he paid for them. And a guy that I was really high on at the beginning of the season that is kind of now finally, I think, getting it going is McCarthy from Jake McCarthy from the Diamondbacks. He had 63 this week. He was a big-time sleeper. Everybody's, I think, coming into the season, struggled mightily, and looks like now he's kind of figured out. So like I said, the Vibes did what they were supposed to do. A very challenging team. He's a top 4 or 5 team in the league, and so it kind of worked out how it was supposed to. I was just surprised at the gap, the 400-point gap.
Yeah, first of all, shout out Bry's team. Again, another team that has all the depth in the world. I think Bry's one of the best managers in this league by far. Obviously, with his strategy, it's just insane. But I think this is a week where you're really seeing what this team could do when it's all put together. The depth really starting to show up. I mean, the stars are also showing up. Ozzie Albies, now the second-ranked second baseman. He had a massive week. You see Rafael Devers had 40. Matt McClain, who was getting passed around, he's still, after joining the big league, still batting .320. He had 44, so another quality trade by Bry. You mentioned Musgrove. Tita has been good. I think it's all going to come down to guys like Eloy Jimenez. If he's going to stay healthy, that's a huge boost to the outfield that he has. That after he just traded for Estoy Ruiz, who was still just stealing 1,000 stolen bases, it feels like a week. Pitching as well, he had a good week out of Tony Gonsolin. Hunter Green had a 23-point start. Javier had a 23-point start. But just look down the list. So many different names. But Bry, I think, is locked in and ready to go. He's got the depth. Can always make a splash if he wants to add maybe another superstar potentially in that lineup if the price is right. In terms of Connor's team, I think a huge performance also out of Brandon Drury. I think that's another guy that, if he continues to rake on a very good Angels offense with the two best, one of the two best players in baseball on it, that could be some trade bait. Tommy Edman as well. He had the big grand slam the other day. But he's starting to hit a lot better. After a slow start to the season. You mentioned McCarthy as well, Tita. But definitely some guys, again, we know what Connor's trying to do. He's been doing a very effective job of it so far. Just got to get some pitching potentially by the deadline. And definitely over the offseason will definitely be a point of emphasis for him. But some more pieces to flip and more pieces to make this team better and getting some W's in the near future.
Yeah, this was a huge week for Bry. He's been another team who was kind of skidding over the past few weeks and picking up a nice big win, over 400-point win against Connor. You guys kind of hit it, Ozzie Albies obviously did well for him, Matt McClain, Stephen Kwan, who's been, not really, he obviously was in that running for Rookie of the Year, was really good last year, had a nice solid week as well, 38 points, and, another, obviously, and also his pitching got him a lot of big points. Obviously, the streams are one thing, but Joe Musgrove, former Beach Dog, he's been kind of turning it around past couple of weeks. I think this is his 5th straight start with over 20 points. His ERA has been dropping. Less than a month ago, it was almost at 7. Now it's dropped down to low 4s, which, obviously still isn't amazing. It still isn't amazing, but, a guy like that for the price Bry paid, I think, can definitely pay dividends in the long term. But something obviously it's a bit sad, but Edward Cabrera, I feel like the story of his career has never been able to really stay healthy, gets put on the IL once again with a shoulder injury. It seems like those Miami pitchers, I don't know what it is in the water, but, with the exception of Sandy, I feel like him, Sixto Sanchez, another former top prospect, it just seems like they can never really get things going. Obviously the talent's there, but never seems to be able to stay on the field. But we're going to go towards, we got 2 more matchups to look at. We're going to go, Hamco finally getting on the win column as the Kannapolis Cannonballers take down the Rochester Red Wings 750 to 416. It feels like a long time coming. A lot of people in this pod have been saying Hamco is due for a win. His team is way too good to only have one win. Well, he finally gets one win, and he did so by scoring the 4th most points this week. John, I'm going to start out with you. Give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Hamco was more than due. This team is scary. 506 points from his bats. We talk about it every week, and this week, just unbelievable. I think a guy that was getting moved around a little bit, Michael Harris, just unbelievable. 96, had a terrible start to the season, but this week he had the big 5-for-5 performance against the Rockies. Also had a 4-for-4 performance against the Tigers. So the talent is there for him. He's really starting to put it together. I think he showed up in training camp, or spring training, out of shape. I think he's really starting to put things together. Brandon Nemo had 52. There Estrada had 42. Just so many guys on this team. Varsho had 40-plus points offensively. And a big thing as well is the pitching. I know it was only 245 points. He got the job done this week, but he got some big starts from some big pieces. Yuri Perez had a very good start this week, had 39 against the Mariners. When you were talking about the Marlins pitcher's hand, I was like, damn, forget about Yuri Perez. So we got to hope this guy stays healthy because he is elite. Starting to throw some more innings as well. Got a good start out of Brian Bello. Played against the shitty Yankees today. Got the job done. Game a 40-piece. Just a lot of players on this team. Again, maybe needs to add a couple of arms here and there if he wants to potentially climb into somewhat of the playoff push, if he wants to rattle off some wins. But if not, Homko's got assets out the wazoo for the future. Good to see that. In terms of Dave's team, bit of an underwhelming performance, I think, by his standards as well. I don't expect him to score 416 every week. Spencer Torkelson, Bragton's former guy, really starting to put things together. Had 67. He's starting to get hot. Correa had 35. He's got some guys, Anthony Santander, Dog, 10th ranked right fielder right now. He gave him 36. But again, it's just the pitching. He's got to find some pitching if he can. I know it's tough, but the bats weren't terrible. Still scored over 300 points with his bats. And I think Dave's got plenty more moves on the horizon to get this team even better. But some different opinions from both these teams this week. And again, really interesting to see what Homko is going to do because, 750 out of a team that's quote-unquote supposed to be rebuilding and that technically has one of the worst records in the league. His team is much better than what his record is. And if he can do that, he's going to have no problem getting some wins and fast against some good teams.
Yeah, kind of just, echoing what you were saying, John. Obviously the potential had always been there for Homko, and I feel like he started to realize it. He outscored my bats this week with, 506 ridiculous amounts. Michael Harris was a guy I was trying to get back because I saw him as a good buy low candidate. I think I forget who owned him at the time when I tried asking for him. He still wanted, kind of equivalent price, and I really wasn't worth giving it up because for me it seemed like a buy low candidate, but he finally, I feel like, hit the point to where his value is maybe not where it was, before this season, but it's probably, climbing back into the upper echelon, so trying to get him on the cheap is probably out of the equation now. Bit of a missed opportunity on my end, but you live and you learn, I guess, in that situation. But another guy, you mentioned him, Dalton Varsho. I feel like he's been getting shit on a lot by Blue Jays fans, and probably for good reason, but, a good 41-point week out of him this week. He had a nice performance against the Rangers a couple of days ago, 16 points, another double-digit performance, and, just absolute, guys just balling all over the course. Brandon Nimmo had 50, Christian Yelich turning back the clock, and then looking over towards the pitching, some good performances, but also, another thing to notice, Homko really didn't stream that much, but he got over 20-plus points from three of his relievers. Johan Duran, former Beach Dog, had 23. Carlos Estevez from the Angels had 27. He's been kind of tearing it up recently. I think he's in the top 3 for saves in the year for that Angels team. And then A.J. Puck also had 26 points. So even for not streaming, getting about 75 points from relievers is good. And then obviously from Dave, it just comes down to pitching. Only 95 points from your arms. Patrick Corbin in a 2-star week, finishing with 3. Kyle Gibson only 21. Greinke with 11. Rich Hill with 4. Obviously Dave's a rebuilding team, but if he wants to even kind of, if he's even looking towards the future, I think he needs to get arms that are at least younger because a lot of these guys are both not good and they're also really old, so you're not kind of winning on any front there. But Tita, you got anything to say you want to add to this matchup?
Yeah, just kind of looking, and I just want to say this because everything, I was going to say, y'all have already touched on. I really think, and I know this might sound crazy, how many more regular season matchups do we have? Like 6? 7?
Hold on. Let's see. So we still have like a lot. We have actually 11, I think. So this
11,
is the halfway point.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm telling you right now, okay, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think Humco at the end of the year will be within a game or so of a playoff spot. Just looking at his team, he's got pitching. His bats always do work. I mean, if you look at his team and look at his prospects, this dude has got a really good setup. I mean, he's set up better than my squad. And so, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that I think Humco is about to rattle off some wins. I feel like he's played a tough schedule. I think he's going to make a run. I know. I mean, I may end up looking silly for saying that, but that's kind of something that I just wanted to add on to this, in regards to this matchup with everybody and everything like that. And then Michael Harris has got it figured out. I think he's back. It was a good pickup for Humco. Dave's going to be fine. He's kind of, I think, realized it's better to go ahead and rebuild / retool. So, like I said, both these teams, they're managed extremely well. I think Humco is about to rattle off some wins, and I think is going to make a run.
Interesting prediction. We have to clip that and revisit this maybe at the end of the season. I mean, Humco, we always talk about Humco, is better than his record, and we'll obviously look at his matchup next week, but if he can rattle off some wins, maybe against the quote-unquote lesser teams, maybe he could play spoiler and really kind of sneak his way in, because, there still is 11 weeks. Let's see, just looking at the standings. He is, 10th place. He is 3 games out of that 7 slot. So, I mean, not an impossible feat to overcome, especially, even if you're looking, a lot of the teams in that middle playoff slot are in our division, and I think T is also in our division, where, we're going to be playing each other more. That's going to be more opportunities for Humco to potentially pick up games. So, maybe he can backdoor his way in that 7 seed and really have someone be disappointed. But, that's something we won't, officially know, at least for the next, 2 months. But one last matchup before we get into the deals. The Tampa Tarpons against the Richmond Flying Squirrels, 781 to 427. Jamie has been on an absolute roll, picking up another big victory. And it seems like after that slow start, he just seems unbeatable at this point. I mean, obviously, we have to see him we haven't seen him. I don't think he's played John or Cody since the beginning of the year. I could be wrong on that one. But we'll start with you, John. What are you seeing from Jamie's team?
Yeah, first of all, I haven't played Jamie, I think, since week either 2 or 3, and his team is very, very fucking scary. His offense scoring 500 points, but just some of the guys like Tatis with 80, Seager with 91. We talk about it every week, and I know he's got a ton of pitching injuries. I know Woodruff's been on the IL. DeGrom's going to be out for a year and a half. He needs to find another pitcher here and there. Only 9 starts with 781. Still scary to think about what he'd be scoring with 12 starts, but 781 is absurd. I definitely think, as well, in addition to the pitching, George Kirby had a really good start. 48 out of Josh Hader. He's got some really good relievers. Kenley Jansen gave him 20. Jordan Romano gave him 28. But, again, Jamie's team is just absurd. Ronald Acuna being, the number 1 ranked bat in baseball right now. Keeping up, Bobby Wood Jr. had a good week as well. He had 47, even for a quiet week by Freddie Freeman, staying with only 22. His team is just absurd. I think his starting lineup, again, he could throw it out there every single day and bank on at least 80 to 100 points alone from his offense on any given day. I remember talking to him early in the season. It's just incredible to see that, his team could have been very boomer busts. With the fact with guys like Acuna and Tatis with the uncertainty, some injuries, obviously Tatis with the suspension, that the potential was always there if all these guys were healthy and playing what it could be. And I think we're seeing it because, right now, like Tita said, I think he's borderline unstoppable. I definitely think, too, if he adds an arm or two as well, I think he definitely will be unstoppable. So scary stuff from Jamie. Again, after that slow start by that unfortunate, scheduling or whatever, he's going to just keep rattling wins. But in terms of Scott's team, 427, bit of a quiet week for some of his younger guys. Francisco Alvarez only had 7. Costas only 19. Big week, though, out of Ryan McMahon. He's actually now the 5th-ranked third baseman. He had 74. So maybe a potential trade piece. Scott's trying to get some young assets in there as well. Bryson Stott, 4th-ranked shortstop, now had 59. Again, the pitching really couldn't do much, only 95. But again, got some trade pieces. Camilo Duvall, 34. He's the guy I was looking at for a while. Just couldn't pay the price. But, definitely some pieces on Scott to work with going forward. Only 8 starts. If he hit the 12, he'd probably be around maybe potentially mid-500 to late 500. So, this is a team that's got some pieces. It's got that building blocks. And Francisco Alvarez, Tristan Casas, they're going to bounce back. Guys like Lourdes Gurriel, who was a trade candidate, he's only at 13. He'll bounce back. Stanton with 12 will bounce back. So Scott, I think, is going to be in good shape and definitely make some more deals as the season goes along. But, yeah, if Jamie is a lower seed in the playoffs, I do not want to face him. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'm just, you look at Jamie, and I just feel like he's still, there's still, Corey Seager getting 91. I've always liked Corey Seager. I think he's just a natural badass as a shortstop, especially in fantasy. Ronald Acuna is to me is the National League. He may be the MVP favorite in all of baseball. I know Shohei's been really good, but I just feel like too, if Jamie could, he could get rid of, like I offered him Drew Smiley before I dropped him for like a worst. I feel like he can get some guys to just fill in. It's just free points, you get from 9 starts. I mean, you look at his pitching. I think his pitching scored 274, which is okay. But if you look at some of the better teams, that's not going to get it done. Now with Alex Cobb going on the DL with the oblique, to me, he's going to be in the market. He's going to need to beat those teams. You're going to need some pitching. His bat's getting 507s all well and good, but you're going to need, to me, 300 points out of your pitching each week. So, Scott, he's still moving and shaking. He does have some pieces. I think he can get, trade McMahon and get a good haul for him. So, like I said, I think both teams are kind of in their direction of where they want to be. But I really think that Scott's going to make some moves to sell and get some more specs. And I really think Jamie, needs to get still. We've said it, but he hadn't listened to any of us, but because he's his own manager, and that's okay. But I just really believe he really needs to get another 2 starting pitchers at least, just to have in the stable in case you get injuries and to give you some starts. So, kind of worked out. Jamie's got a loaded team, but it can get a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're talking about Jamie scoring, but this feels like if, maybe a week, especially if you're looking at a playoff matchup where the difference between a one great week and a bad week could be the end of your team. I feel like, I think we've been saying, it's kind of on Jamie to kind of realize this, but getting the extra starting pitching obviously matters, and we know how good his hitting is, but his pitching is very susceptible. And then looking towards Scott, I mean, you're not going to win many weeks when you have 95 total pitching points, including 34 from your reliever, who is your best pitcher overall, more than any of your starting pitchers. So, and then also Ryan McMahon, shout out him. He's always been kind of a fan favorite of mine with 74 points. And also Jon Heite. I had a message from my roommate Ryan. He wanted to wish you hi. So if obviously.
Hello, Ryan Johnson.
So yeah, but we're gonna head to the best part of the podcast. A little bit of a light, week on the trade front. I mean, I think there was a decent amount of minor deals, but especially the bigger deals, not as big, especially as last week. Which I mean, it was going to be hard to beat last week. either way. But I mean, if you want to, we can rattle off especially some of the lesser known ones. But I mean, John, if you want to talk about your Michael Wacha deal, I know you've been high on him. Just kind of your thought process there. I think I was actually there. No, I was with you when you got Ramirez and Peraza. But I mean, if you want to talk about your Michael Wacha deal, and then also trading away your favorite player, Patrick Sandoval.
Yeah, so, yes, I was with you, Hen, when I traded away Ramirez and Peraza. Or, no, I got Ramirez and Peraza from actually Tita, funny enough, for Teoscar Hernandez, where I had the extra outfielder once I traded for Nick Castellanos. So, didn't need him. I know he did pretty well this week, so it worked out for both sides. But I flipped those two immediately the next day. Again, like I mentioned, Rodon, Fried, Erod, not available. So I've been trying to make do, and after trading away Shane Bieber for, a top 3 prospect in baseball and Jackson Churio, just wanted a little bit more stability. I had no intentions of starting Patrick Sandoval. I think he sucks, and I wanted Churio, so just needed an arm back to then flip. But I sent Peraza Ramirez for Michael Wacha, who's been a guy I've been targeting for about a week or two. It turns out I wasn't the only one. I talked to Bry as well. He was after him. There might have been some more people. 24 point per game pitcher. I know he's dead because he's 31. So yeah, I got to put him out the pasture soon. But I was reading.
Got to take him behind the barn.
Where's that?
Got to take him behind the barn.
Got behind the barn. But since May 15th, I'll read some of the starts. 53, 32, 26, 12, 41, 37. He's been phenomenal. He's only given up he's only been scored on 3 out of his last 8 outings. So that's why I traded for him, some stability and some elite numbers, honestly, until I get those dudes back, and it worked out for this week. But then again, I traded away Sandoval because he sucks. I wanted the youth, so I got actually a first out of it, even though it's a couple of years away, as well as Dylan Beavers, Michael McGreevy. McGreevy, was a former Hartford Yard Goat. I had him earlier. He just actually got promoted to AAA, I think, at the end of April, even though he wasn't really doing too hot. But, got some potential there. Dylan Beavers, obviously, Orioles guy. We haven't heard a lot about him. He's an Orioles prospect, so could be an absolute stud like most of their prospects turn out to be. But again, it was all about getting rid of Patrick Sandoval, even though we had that Mickey start against the Royals this week. But yeah, I'll get my thoughts about some of the other deals in a little bit. So Tita, I'll let you do your deals first before we do that.
Yeah, actually, if you want to, because Tita, so you had a couple of deals you traded away.
Yeah, I had a couple of minor deals.
If you can go in, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I didn't really have anything league shattering like some of these other deals, so I won't spend much time. I traded Joe Musgrove and Austin Hayes to Bry for Emmett Sheehan, Byron Buxton, and Emmanuel Rodriguez, who I absolutely love. I know he's kind of boom or bust prospect, but I actually think, for me, out of that entire deal, Rodriguez was my favorite get. I think Sheehan is a stud. I think he's, I'm a big fan of Dodgers and Rays starting pitchers, especially their prospects. And so Sheehan, to me, I think will equal out Hayes, and then Buxton and Erod over Musgrove for me. Eventually, like I said, Buxton sucks right now. And then I think I had maybe one more. Getting Willie Adames, gave up from and a worst from Connor. I traded my Bryce 24 second, my 24 first, and Whit Merrifield. Adames is young. I can, needed to put some pressure on Dansby, have a good backup just in case, because Dansby was struggling. And I was really kind of a light week for me in regard for that. Just kind of tinkering and trying to acquire different assets and trying to accumulate some more minor spots.
Yeah, I'll kind of talk a bit about the one deal. I'm also a big Emmanuel Rodriguez guy. I was thinking, because I noticed you swooped on him first, so I was a bit disappointed. I think he's really starting to hit his stride as well. He could definitely, he's definitely been rising up rapidly in the prospect rankings. And Emmett Sheehan, former Beach Dog, I think I undersold him. I forget who I traded him for. I think it might have been for Sonny Gray, who started off well but has been struggling. He was kind of a borderline. I don't even know if he was a top 100 prospect when I traded for him, and then I think he made his MLB debut last week, and he had a nice 20-point per game start. So a bit unfortunate. I mean, but I think you did well on that front. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Joe Musgrove has had a couple of good starts for Bry, but big deals outside of us. I mean, we'll talk about the Freddie Peralta shenanigans because he got traded once, twice, three times, 4 times?
Yeah.
3 times in this week alone. So I'll start with, including a Braxton trade back, I believe so. I could be wrong, actually. No, he did not get Braxton retraded back. But, Braxton got him back. But, so, first trade, Bry. So Paul sent Freddie Peralta for Kyle Manzardo, Drew Gilbert, and Luis Serna. Kyle Manzardo, I know he's been flirting around the top 15, top 10 prospect rankings. And if you can get a top 10, top 15 prospect for Freddie Peralta, I know, he had a good start this week, but I just feel like the stuff is there with him, but for some reason, I don't know if it's just because the Brewers suck or it's Corbin Burns has released some devil voodoo magic for them not giving him an extension, but he just has not been able to be consistently good. At least when I had him, he was very frustrating. So I think Paul won on that front, and then he flipped him. About a day later to Braxton Bry flipped him to Braxton for Esteury Ruiz, Noah Denor, Wilkeman Gonzalez. I assume it's Esteury Ruiz and 4 worsts. So, I mean, Esteury Ruiz, stolen base god, and then obviously just getting prospect slots for Freddie Peralta, and then Bry actually got him back for Vinny Pasquantino and Cutter Crawford, or he traded away Vinny Pasquantino and Cutter Crawford for Freddie Peralta and Ryan Mountcastle. I like Vinny P. I think he's gonna be out. He's gonna be out for a while. I like him as a long-term first baseman, but Ryan Mountcastle also hasn't been great as well. But I think Bry wanted that extra start, and I think he kind of took advantage of that. So, So I don't know what your guys' thoughts on the whole shenanigans were. If you want to just do it overall or kind of like a breakdown, I don't care.
Yeah, Freddie Peralta, he's been passed around. I mean, once you make the blunt rotation at the end of the year, got to throw him on there. I think the first time around, again, Paul getting Manzardo, he's top 50-ish right now, at least on Pipeline, and a couple other prospects for Freddie Peralta, who, again, has been struggling before this good start this week. Braxton getting him back, wasn't surprised. Very surprised to see him move on from Esteury Ruiz. Just very interesting. I didn't think he would do that, but, I guess if you look at it now, it was Esteury Ruiz and those other dudes for Vinny P and Cutter Crawford, because he ended up getting those back. And in addition to Mountcastle with Peralta as well was sent to Bry. Also a little interesting, I didn't think he would. Obviously, I think Vinny Pasquantino is a lot. I think going to be better than Mountcastle in terms of long-term upside and everything. But Braxton's trying to somewhat compete this year. I don't really understand that if he's going to give up a starter, even though I don't think Peralta's been that great this year. And also, a young first base bat for a guy who's, I think they announced he's not going to play the rest of the year. I'm not really critiquing. I'm just curious of what that thought process was. If he's trying to really compete, or if he's just doing a little retool there, which is probably ended up what he was doing. But yeah, maybe Freddie Peralta turned it around and make a bunch of people look dumb. But I'm not moved by one start. But we'll see if Bry can get the most out of it. If any manager in this league can get the most out of a pitcher, I really do think it's Bry.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of a little bit. I get it. Vinny P is going to be better than Mountcastle. But if you're going for it, you give away Mountcastle and Peralta for Pasquantino. who's coming off labrum surgery. I think Pasquantino's going to be at least a year away with the shoulders. Hitters, pitchers, I really worry about shoulders with them. And that was, to me, was one of the depth deals that maybe Brackett didn't need to make. I liked him trading Tiedemann for Gorman. I really like Nolan Gorman. And then, I'm a power guy. I love potential power hitters, high K, so sometimes my teams can be a little inconsistent. I guess the one I didn't get was flipping Gorman with tons of upside for Luis Arias. I know a lot of people love Luis Arias. I'm not one of those guys. I know he hits, he may hit 5 homers a year and he'll hit a bunch of singles. I mean, that's just not my kind of guy. There's a place for him on I think he's a great catch league guy. But trading him, one which turns out to be Ricky, Tiedemann for Luis Reyes, I kind of wouldn't have done. But like I said, that's has nothing to do with me. Selling low on Soroka, I think, you get little baby Cheerio back. I would have probably just held on to Soroka for what you paid for him. I think you got to hold, especially because, how long Soroka has been out of the loop of professional baseball and the majors pitching. I think the other one that I really liked too was Barrios and Lynn going from Norfolk to Bowling Green for Nico Horner and a third. Cody had an excess amount of second baseman. I like Nico Horner, and Jose Barrios has kind of got it figured out. So, like I said, that was to me, my thoughts on it. I felt like we said a lot of the same guys go back and forth this week.
Yeah, very interesting week.
Wait, Hen, can I do those deals real quick too before you give yours? Because I didn't think we were doing those yet.
Okay. I mean, I was gonna. Okay, if you want to come in, I was gonna give your sense, and then I'll kind of wrap this section up.
I was just gonna say real quick about those because I thought they were interesting. Bragton giving up Tiedemann right away. I know that was a guy I thought he really was going to build around. Having him and Gavin Williams, I thought was interesting. I know, Nolan Gorman, he's been really bad lately, but went up to a blistering start. He's super young, like Tita said, got a ton of pop to him. And again, I think him and Jordan Walker are going to be running the Cardinals, into maybe if they start rebuilding or retooling whatever they're going to do. So I thought that was an interesting trade. I don't think anyone really won that trade, at least yet. I think Ricky Tiedemann is the wild card there. If he turns into an ace, then, Bragton could have used the extra arm because he's still got some work to do in the pitching department. The Barrios trade, I'm not big on Barrios, but I think the way he's pitching right now, it made complete sense for Cody. He needs some reliable starting pitching with some of these guys, at least some of these younger arms kind of faltering a little bit. Even guys like Strider, to offset that, maybe Strider doesn't get hot again until July. Having a guy like Barrios who's been pitching out of his mind lately, I think is going to help him. But yeah, it was a win-win because Nico Horner, I think, is an absolute dog. I played against him this week against Cody. I'm not looking forward to playing him against Paul next week. And then the Luis Arias for Gorman trade, I kind of have a little bit different opinion on this. I know Arias isn't big in fantasy because he's a singles merchant. He doesn't really hit homers really ever. He's just, the guy's batting almost 400. I thought it made a little bit more sense, at least for this week, for Cody to keep Arias or maybe trade him for a more reliable bat. Because, with Cody's team, trading for Gorman as well, we've seen the model. He's got guys who are like 21 to 26, super elite, upside out the wazoo. But in terms of this year, if he's trying to win potentially, I think Arias hurts a little bit. Maybe he thinks he's going to slow down, which probably would make a little bit more sense. But I think also at the same time, he probably did this because I think Gorman is going to get hot again, and he's going to provide more fantasy value than Arias. But we'll see. If Arias bats 400 by the end of the year, maybe that's a bat he wishes he kept. But again, Gorman has the upside. It's still the better long-term play because Gorman is one of the best young players, in my opinion, in the league, and it made sense why he went after him. But just an interesting trade there. And again, the Soroka trade, as much as I think Soroka sucks, for one prospect, was a little interesting. I really couldn't believe the Jackson trio disrespect. I know Brack doesn't have him anymore. Still surprised that he's been undervalued ever since he traded him, so that's interesting. But, anyone who's related to Jackson Trio is a fan of mine, so best of luck to Jason Trio as well in his endeavors.
Yeah, the Freddie Peralta kind of saga was interesting, and I'll give my sense of some of the other bigger trades as well. Ricky Tiedemann, I remember I had him, I got him when I inherited my team this year, and I remember Bracton was pressing me for, a good month or two about trading for him. I finally gave him up in the Freddie Peralta deal, and, I don't disagree with the idea of trading Ricky Tiedemann. He's not going to get called up until at least next year, maybe even 2025, and then even then, expecting him to be an ace out the gate, in his rookie season is unrealistic. So you're really waiting like 2 years for him to really start hitting his stride. But to give him up for essentially Luis Arias, I thought if I was Bracton, I would have tried getting a bigger player just because, Tiedemann probably is a top 3 to 5 pitching prospect with, ace upside, and he hasn't had really any injury concerns like some of the like a guy like Andrew Painter, even though I love him, that is something to worry about now. So, I thought that was kind of a bit of an asset mismanagement. I just think if you're going to trade away a top pitching prospect who has legit ace potential, getting Luis Arias, I feel like wasn't the best use of it. But, we'll see how it all plays out. This isn't a trade that's really going to see the fruits of the labor at least until a couple of years from now. And, obviously, and then going to the Barrios, Nico Horner deal, I think, like you guys said, I think it's a win-win. Cody, needs pitching, especially, I don't know if you got it just for Jon Heite or just because he needs some pitching, but I think, always adding another quality starting arm is never really a bad thing in this league. And then looking towards the Gorman, Luis Arias, I don't know how I feel about it. I know Gorman's the higher ceiling guy, but right now even with his pop, he's just striking out way too much. I think he's at like a 40 to 50% clip of striking out recently. That number may go down, but as long as he's striking out that rate, it's kind of hard to really be invested in him as a consistent fantasy option. But Luis Arias being a singles merchant definitely is a factor. And would you rather go with the younger guy who is more of a high risk, high floor guy, or a kind of a high ceiling, low floor guy, or just consistency in Arias? I think Bracton, looking at his team, he has a lot of these kind of boomer bust guys. You look at a guy like Ellie De La Cruz. Even J-Rod, he's obviously better as dynasty asset, but he hasn't been consistent across the board this year, so maybe he just wanted a reliable bat. And then the fact that he got any sort of assets for Mike Soroka, I think is an absolute win. I think, a guy who's in the minors who, is on, in third, we joke around 30, but, the fact that he has had major surgery and age isn't really on his side. I think the fact you can get a guy like Jason Turia who does have that elite upside, it is, I think, a win for Bracton in that case. And
well, Soroka's still only 26, Hen.
I thought he was older. Well, okay.
No.
Well, I don't know why I thought maybe I'm thinking of probably, okay. Well, I don't know why I thought he was in his 30s, so that is just...
Yeah, no, he's still 20. He's only 26.
Okay, that I don't know why. I must have been confusing him. Must have been confusing him with someone else in the Braves. I'm sorry. Well, thank you, Tita, for pointing out that I could have just been kind of spitballing without knowledge. I'm sorry for misinforming the listeners, but yeah. But, I don't know. I'm not a big Soroka guy, regardless, but I think the upside on Churio is there. So, looking towards the matchups for next week, if my Fantrax decides to load, I think this is going to be the matchup of the week. I might be saying this as a biased individual because I am hosting this podcast, but I truly think if you look at the matchups, this is matchup of the week regardless. But me and Tita, obviously, it's a big matchup, the Nashville Sounds and the Clearwater Beach Dogs. Obviously, Tita's team, he's been kind of slowing down on the wheeling and dealing. You're getting more of an idea of who's going to be on his team on a week to week basis. But you never know. He could always flip it on a switch and get someone big out there. But I am a bit worried about my team. I will say I feel like you guys maybe I'm kind of feeding into the narrative where people have been saying, oh, my team is very hot or cold, and I've been consistently scoring 700, 800 every week, and it would be, kind of if you're looking at how my team's played against the top echelon teams, like I beat up on the bad teams, and the week I really need to kind of hit that high sevens, low, like that mid to high sevens, it would be a week like this where I drop down to like the sixes, but I got to be confident in the Beach Dogs. They're my team. I will say it's going to be a very close match against Tita, but I think I'm going to win. And I assume Tita's going to say the same about his team. But, Tita, what do you think of this matchup?
To be honest with you, I don't know. Something's off with my team right now, I think. I know it's crazy to say. I can't really put my finger on it. And looking at my starting pitching matchups, there's a couple where I'm just like, ooh. I do have more starts than I have available, than the 12. But out of the 12, I'm not comfortable in many. I actually think, to be honest with you, and I think that to me, Fantrax has us really close. I think you're going to win. I think your team's hot. I think you have some good pieces rolling at the right times. I think for me is just kind of figuring out, I don't know. I feel like I need to make a move or two to kind of reorganize how my team is. I think I need to, and we'll see. I have some, discussions out there and offers out there. But I just think that this week, I don't think it's a good week for me. Now, I could be totally wrong. Not saying that I won't have faith or I don't, anything like that. But, just looking at my team this week and the matchups, I'm just not super comfortable like I was last week. I felt good against Paul's team because of my matchups. I thought I had some good matchups. Thought I had John Gray on the 2-start week. So I just, I think if I knew what I was getting sometimes from my team with Dansby, I'm streaky too. My team is really streaky too. That's kind of my MO for what I look for. So like I said, it could, go either way. I think it'll be close. I don't think either of us will blow each other out, but I think Hen gets revenge from my earlier win against him, and I actually think Hen pulls this one out, as crazy as that may sound, picking against yourself.
Wow. So I've been thinking about this for probably the last 20 minutes, honestly, because I'm just trying to just give a reason for what I'm thinking. All right, so, the way Hen performed last week, the natural law of fantasy baseball goes into effect. He's probably not going to score as much. Maybe I'll be wrong. I know my team won't score that much. So you figured the production will probably dip at least a little bit to what he scored last week. And Tita, like you mentioned, I am a little bit worried about the pitching matchups. So I'm going to go a little bold here. I know Tita will not want to hear this, but, if there was ever a week where I could see another tie again, I'm going to say it's this one. I know it sounds stupid, and I shouldn't be rooting for a tie or picking a tie, but I think, I don't know, the way both your team's projections are, it's within like 8 points. So I think it's very possible it's going to be a tie. And if it's not a tie, I think it's going to be decided within 10. And I guess I'd lean Hen, but I fully believe that it's going to be within 10 points and potentially a tie, which, I'm probably not going to say that ever again, but I think this is the fitting time to say it.
Wow. What a cop-out answer. A tie.
There's been multiple ties, so it's really not much of a cop-out.
I'm busting your balls, John. But it will be interesting if we do see, what would it be, a fourth tie?
Yeah, I want chaos tie.
5.
I can see it. I don't know. I got to look some more, but just setting up my starting pitching, that's kind of what I go by each week, like initially. And, a lot of times when you have those really good matchups, they really jump off at you. I know probably you all look at yours and see the same. And there wasn't a whole lot of matchups where I'm like, oh, yeah, Like, I want to say Zach Eflin's going against Kansas City later on in the week. I'm like, man, that's a 30-pointer. But the rest of them, I'm really not super confident in, but I wouldn't, about how they're going to go.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm still setting. I actually just kind of looking at my setting it. I do have a Bailey Ober Detroit Tigers start, so that's always nice. But, I mean, we'll see. I mean, anything can really happen. But I don't know. I think it's going to be close. I do worry that the regression, at least, or the regression that's been happening throughout the year. Maybe this is the new norm, like the 700s, but I'm very interested to see. I mean, right now, I don't know what Fantrax has it projected as, but I assume it's very close. So, I'm expecting a big match. I'm expecting a good match here. I know we're gonna battle to the end, and I think we're gonna get a good match that we're gonna look back at next week on this podcast. But looking towards the next matchup, another potential matchup of the week candidate. Definitely in consideration, but it's the Tampa Tar Pawns against the Rocky Mountain Vibes. Jamie, like we said, has been on an absolute heater. Bry, has cooled off since his hot start, but he picked up a nice big win. The 4 and the 5 matchup, whoever wins this will get, that obviously will get that seeding. So, I'll start with you, John. What are you feeling in this matchup? How do you think this is going to go?
Yeah, well, I promise rest of the year I will not be giving another tie answer. I just thought it was very fitting for the you and Tita's matchup because I do think there is a strong chance of that happening somehow. But this matchup, very intriguing. I do think Jamie gets another starter this week. I just have that gut feeling. I think his bats are going to be there. I'm not going to bet against Jamie until he gives me a reason not to, even with, the lack of starting pitching, starts or whatever. I'm going to take Jamie in this one. I already looking at some of the matchups. I know Philly and Atlanta's a big matchup this week, but, Tatis's got the Giants. Seager's got the White Sox. I mean, then that's just for batters. I know for pitching, Garrett Cole, I think, got the Mariners earlier this week. So I'll be at Yankees-Mariners Wednesday, which he won't be pitching. But I'm going to lean, again, Jamie. The offense is too powerful right now. It's not giving me a reason to pick against him because of that. I do think Bry's going to put up a shit ton of points, but I think Jamie's just going to just do a little bit more. And I'm going to say, though, it's within about 50 points or so because this is a matchup I've been looking forward to for a while. Two very interesting owners for sure, which is a good thing.
Tita, what are you thinking?
Just thinking and looking, I'm actually going to go the other way. I know Jamie has been hot. I'm going to go with Bry. I really am. I think that Bry has him beat in the arms, and I feel like Bry's bats right now are pretty hot. I think it kind of goes back to me, it's going to be ownership. One owner is going to work their tail off daily. One owner is going to sit back and let it roll with however many starts, and I actually think that Bry's going to pull this one out. I'm going to go with Bry in an upset with a big weekend push to upset the Tar Pawns.
Wow, I think something I actually just noticed as well because I saw Jamie had the caution sign. Pete Alonso's coming back off the IL. He said it was activated, so.
Yeah, wait. Alonso came back today. He played today.
Okay, so he came back today, and
yeah.
So I mean, that's obviously a bat that Jamie can just slot back in, which obviously would help him out. This is just my thinking, and I mean, I don't know the exact data. I haven't kept mental track, but I feel like over the past, I'd say month or so, Jamie's just been consistently outscoring Bry's team. I think these teams are kind of on two different trajectories. Obviously Bry still has a good team, but I think, he's kind of been, plateauing or saying now, well, Jamie's just been on an absolute heater. I think even with, the fact that Bry is going to, work the waiver wire game, I think the fact that he's going to get his 12-star minimum, whether that's just through his roster right now, or he's going to make a trade later on the week. I just think Jamie's offense might be, I mean, maybe with the exception of John, but he definitely has a top 2 offense in this league. The bats that he has on his team are just disgusting. So I think he'll just win off of that alone, even though, Bry definitely manages his team more. And looking at another absolute, haymaker of a match, a very underrated one, obviously we're coming down, we're getting down, we're really seeing who's going to be the top matchups. We have the Hartford Yard Goats taking on the Norfolk Tide. John, obviously this is your squad. How are you feeling?
Well, obviously I am riding on the highs of, my biggest win to date against, the juggernaut that is Cody's team. A little backstory, me and Paul already played, I think back when, it was week 1, that extended week. I dropped 1,040 points. He dropped 839. I mean, first of all, a lot has changed between both of our squads since then. For me, I know my team is going to regress, at least from the point totals. That 2-week stretch where I dropped 900 and like 860 earlier in the year, my team slowed down for like a week or two, even though I got the wins. But I think, even though I, almost hit 1,000, I think I'll still put up a pretty good showing this week. I thought my pitching matchups weren't that good last week, which was really worrisome against Cody. I kind of like him this week. I like now, I got Blake Snell and Michael Wacha in this rotation, and they've been pitching out of their minds. And I think Rodon's going to be back soon. He's actually I think he's got a rehab start this week. Fried will be back, I think, after the All-Star break, and Erod should be back soon as well. Paul's team, though, I'm not looking forward to it because there's a ton of upside there. We just traded for Yoshida, who's a guy I was worried about playing against when Cody had him. He's coming off a 30-point day today in a doubleheader. Never fun to go up against Adley or a former yard goat in Bregman, who I now just despise. Every time I get a Felix Bautista save this week, Yanier Cano is going to get a hold, so that also kind of sucks. Another narrative, the Nate Pearson revenge game as well. That was a part of the Bautista trade, which, looking back on it, I don't know if Paul would have made that trade if he knew that the Orioles, I guess, would have been this good, because Bautista is actually number 1 ranked reliever right now in baseball, and I think he has like 19 saves. But obviously, I'm not going to pick against myself until there's a reason not to pick against myself. So, obviously, I don't want to go undefeated because I think, going in, obviously, I want to win as many games as I can in the regular season. The playoffs is what I'm looking for. I obviously want that 1 seed to get the bye. So I want to keep winning, but, I'm going to have a bad week here and there. I hope it's not this week. I know Paul is one of the best owners in this league, obviously in LM. So hope I can get the win and hope the Yargos can keep rolling here.
Tita?
Paul, like I said, I think he is in a spot to where near the end of the year he's going to make some moves as well as the year keeps progressing. Excuse me. I think his team is really, really good. I think they're underrated. I think with a few breaks this week, our matchup could have went the other way. I think he's going to keep it close for a little bit because I'm like Jon Heite. I don't know if, some teams can put up monster points, but usually in baseball it goes ebbs and flows. You may be hot one week. It's kind of hard to say, all right, I'm about to score 900 points again. I also will agree with Jon Heite that I don't think there's a reason to pick against him. The week that he could have been beaten, I think, is the week that me and him played, and we both kind of were like in the mid 600s. If he's in that if he gets another one of those weeks, Paul can most certainly beat him. I think it may be close for a little while. But I also think, at the end, just got the ultimate cheat code in Ohtani, and he's got bats for days and arms for days, and so I think he's gonna kind of finish it off over this next coming up weekend, and I think it'll be close to about Thursday or Friday though.
Yeah, I think obviously Paul has a very talented team and he has the management skills. But I think, as John says, I'm not going to pick against this team unless he plays my team. Then I will pick against this team. But with the exception of that, I feel like, until he really proves it, I feel like, he will. I feel like I would just pick John's team to win, and then he'll turn into the 16-0 New England Patriots and lose. But I mean, I think there is a world where maybe regression does come back to the mean, and Paul has a great week, while John has a substandard week for his substandard week for his expectations on his team, and maybe something comes out. I'm not saying it's impossible for Paul to win. I just think if I'm a betting man, I'd put my money on the Hartford Yardgoods. I think this will be like a 150. I think it'll be within 150 points, maybe 200 points. I don't think it'll be a complete blowout like we saw, this week against Cody. I think, Paul will keep it respectable, and Jon Heite will keep cruising, though, to a victory. Now, a very interesting matchup that I want to look at, and I think, honestly, this, I wouldn't be shocked by the end of this week if, this is, a win for one of these teams or a very close game. But the Kannapolis Cannonballers and the Bismarck Larks, to me, is a very fascinating matchup. Obviously, Bracton fighting for that 7th seed, and Homco still only has 2 wins, but we know his offensive output. What are you guys thinking of this matchup? I know, John, you're very critical of Bracton's team, so I want to get your feel on this first.
Well, obviously, we've both been critical about.
That's true. That's true. I don't want to say. I'm not. I won't sing. I won't sing you out. But
I only say that because he's obviously one of my best friends, and I think I've even said the league is better when Bracton's better, just because he's an LM. He's one of our most active owners. I'm on Fantrax right now because they both set their starts. Homco has 11, Bracton has 12. You got to assume Homco gets one more. They lean Bracton 578 to 561. But for me, the key with Bracton's team, and it's obviously there's one cheat code right now. It's Shohei Ohtani, and I guess you throw Acuna in there too. He's also a cheat code. But in terms of pitching, the best pitcher in baseball right now, he's SP1 for a reason. Bracton's got Shane McClanahan, and I really do like what he's starting to do with his pitching. I think he's got a lot of work to do. But Homco, outside of Yuri Perez, who I love, and I think he's going to, be an absolute stud. I think he's got a lot of questions with his pitching, even though the bats are there. So I'm actually going to take Bracton in this one because, again, I talked about it with the Arias Gorman trade. Arias is a singles merchant, but he's going to give him 6 to 7 plus points a day with the way he's been batting. So he's got some consistency there. Josh Jung was another good pickup. I know he gave up a lot, but he's making a run for potential AL Rookie of the Year. Ellie, again, I think he's going to strike out a lot. He's going to hit a home run, here and there. He's going to get hot soon. I don't think he's going to be the reason why he wins, though. I think it's going to come down to a guy like Shane McClanahan. Bobby Miller's going to bounce back after a -3 against the Giants this week. So I'm going to take Bracton. Obviously, that's just how I see it. I think Shane Bieber still stinks. I think he might pitch against the A's, but I still think he stinks and he's washed, and Jackson Churrio's better. It's going to be better. But, I'll take the Larks this week, despite popular belief.
I'm going to go, and I guess it must have been that Mexican I ate earlier talking to me. I'm going to go, not a person, the food. I'm going to go with another upset, I guess. I'm going to pick Homco. I feel like if I make a statement like he's going to make the playoffs, I got to double down on that, right? Put my picks where my mouth is, and I think that Braxton is going to. I just think he has some depth issues in some certain areas that is going to cause and show up on some of these light days and on Mondays and Thursdays, and I just think that Homco's team is really good and really underrated. And so I'm going to go with Homco's team in an upset over Bracton. Even though I love Bracton, I think he's a really good owner. I feel like hopefully he's loosening his age stance, but I just think something about Homco's team is talking to me and telling me to pick them. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about a matchup, just talking about, obviously you're looking at the matchups like, me and Tita's, obviously playoff implications, obviously, we're top of the teams, same with Jamie and Bry, but if you're talking about just pure evenness of these teams, obviously the records, Bracton's 5-6, Homco's 2-7-2, but their points for Homco has 637 over 6.287, so less than 100 points for, and their points against 740 and 730 in actually in favor of the Bismarck Larks. So, I mean, if you're talking about two teams who are very evenly matched based on, pure points output, I think it's this matchup. And I don't know, I think I have to go with Tita here. I just think, Homco's team, I mean, maybe it was an outlier week, but I feel like he just, the regression has been favoring Homco just putting up points, and if he can get that 12th start, I think that's going to be huge for him. I mean, if he can get that 12th start, I think that might be the difference maker. I think this is going to be a close match. I think it's going to be decided on Sunday, and I'm going to say it's going to be within, 50 points. I think this is going to come down to, maybe who's more savvy in the waivers, or who's, gets that great start and the other person, gets an unfortunate start. It's going to come down to a couple of big plays and a couple of big moments, but I think Homco is going to narrowly edge out Bracton. So maybe it's not even an upset after all, Tita. I don't know. Maybe the Mexican lied to you. So going towards, in my opinion, the first of our two tank bowls this week, we have the El Paso Chihuahuas versus the Rochester Red Wings. Dave, Smell, what do you guys think of this? Who do you think is going to take it out? Tita, we'll start with you.
I actually have no idea. I think Dave probably is going to try to win a little more than Smell. I think Smell is still in the process of, selling off anybody that's older. He's in the Bracton mode right now of selling off all his older guys. Dave is still, he has some pieces. His team's just got some guys slumping, some guys injured. Smell has the better pitching. I do think that when healthy, Dave has the better bats. I think, I'll refer to the Mexican again, I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to pick Dave to beat Smell this week. I think it's a low-scoring game. If either team breaks 600, I'd be surprised. I think they're like in the low 500s, maybe high 480s. So I'm going to go with Dave to beat Smell this week.
Yeah, first of all, for me, one thing I noticed for Dave, Zach Nito, I know he's going to be out for a little bit. He got that 10-day IL stint for the left oblique strain. So that was one thing I really noticed. I think also it's going to be a pretty low-scoring week. I think Smell's going to make a ton of trades this week. I know he's been busy in the poker world, winning a bunch of money. Now he's really getting back into the league with all the deals and everything. I expect maybe Justin Turner got to be on the move. Could really, help a contender to looking for another third base bat or something. I don't know if he trades Spencer Steer. I think he's really a part of the core he's trying to build. Him and he has Dylan Cease. So I don't know if he's going to trade them necessarily. I know he's gotten a lot of offers for Cease. I don't think unless someone overpays, he's going to move him. But I've thought about it. I think I'm still going to lean Dave on this one. I really like what Anthony Santander is doing right now, and Correa's been mashing. Torkelson, even though he's been throughout his whole career, he's been red hot lately. So I'm going to leave Dave on this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Snow won, but I will say it's going to be between about maybe 40 to 50 points either way. But I'll take Dave on this one as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think both teams are really going to try having fun this week. I think that's their number one goal. But if I had to pick, I just think, obviously Dave is starting to think more retool, but I still think he's committed in the back of his head to at least try to go out there and put the best roster you can out there. I think Smell is really, not in the complete mindset of tanking because he doesn't have his first-round pick, but he's more of, he's chalking up this year. He's focused towards the future. He's stockpiling on a bunch of high school juniors and college freshmen this year for the 2025 draft. So I think, there's a couple other pieces, like you said, still could be moved on Smell's front. And I think if you're looking at the best player, I think that goes towards Dave, which isn't always an indicator of who's going to win. But I think, the fact that he has, a Carlos Correa, Spencer Torkelson's been mashing the ball, Anthony Santander, like you said. It is interesting because right now, obviously the starts haven't been put in yet, so we'll see kind of where that fits in. Also, Smells had an issue getting those starts. He's usually hovering around like the 8 or 9 mark, so that could be another factor into Dave winning this, but I think he'll get the win there. So, got two more matchups to talk about before we sign off. We're gonna move the tanks along once again, and we're gonna take the siege over to the Amarillo Sod Poodles versus the Richmond Flying Squirrels. Another duke it out tank battle here. What are you guys thinking for this matchup? You think we're gonna get some exhilarating offense, some great defense, some fun antics? What do you think is gonna happen?
I think we're going to get a little bit of both, and or a little bit of everything, not just both. You said about 5 things there. Another thing I have to look at, I know Connor's lot roster's illegal, so I'm sure he'll fix that right away.
He has 31 roster spots. I just looked at that.
Yeah, the projects his 418 is 0 right now, which obviously is not going to happen. I think it really depends on what's going to go on with Scott's young guys. Francisco Alvarez is in sort of a mini slump right now. I think he's like 2 for his last 20-something. Guys like him and Tristan Casas really got to wake up, to see what he's going to do. He's got some great relievers, though. I love Camilo Duvall. Would still like Camilo Duvall if you're listening, Scott. But
Dang.
Yeah, I know, right? Connor, though, again, you're talking about before, Jake McCarthy's been red hot. Tommy Edman and Drury have been good. It's just tough whenever I see teams like Connor and there's a couple other teams as well that just, have a bunch of guys that mash for a week or two. They end up trading them for young assets, which is important. So that's why it makes it so much harder to pick them or to pick whatever matchups being discussed, just because we don't know if they're going to be on their team by the end of the week. I am going to lean Connor on this one, though. I think he's had some bad luck lately. I think he could bring in maybe a bat or two as well. I know Scott, technically has that core of Alvarez, Casas, and all these dogs on this team. Again, wouldn't be surprised if Scott could pull out the win, but I'm going to take the Amarillo Sod Poodles in this one.
Tita, what do you think?
I'm actually going to go with the opposite way. I'm actually. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my bad. I'm actually going to go with the Richmond Flying Squirrels in this one. I don't really have a huge reason why, except for I think that he has a little more. I guess you could. I'm going to say it. I don't know if it's really true, but a little more star power, in a sense, in certain spots. But I guess the hindsight is the pitching that kind of worries me. Actually, I'm going to backtrack and I'm going to agree with Jon Heite. I'm going to go with Connor. I think Connor's going to work to acquire arms. I think he's going to keep trying to acquire guys. After looking at Scott's team and looking at his arms, I was like, hold on, never mind. I just feel like it's going to be tough for him to get a whole lot of pitching points. Whereas I think he does have the better bats. I do think that Connor has the better arms. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Connor. I'm going to reverse course and pick Connor to come up with a W.
Wait, so Tia, did you switch your pick mid-prediction?
I did. I went and I was feeling good.
It's the Mexican.
Yeah, I was feeling good, and then I had to disagree with the Mexican that was talking to me. I had to go back and totally look at it, and I was just looking at bats for a minute, and I was like, no, that ain't going to work. But there's no arms. There's not enough arms. I don't think Scott will be able to get to the start, get those 12 starts, which I know Connor's going to hustle and stream and try to get there.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to disagree with the Mexican, agree with you, Tita. I think Connor, for as much as he realizes, the future is the outlook, I'll tell you, this guy's a hustler. He's always working the waiver wire. He's always making deals. He's always trying to put in position, to at least win every week, even if the end goal isn't really to win this season, if that makes any sense. I don't know if it does. But he's always active. He's always trying to wheel and deal, like you said, John, get a bat, pick up a bat who's hot, try flipping him for like a couple of prospects or two, just accumulate assets, find these guys on the waivers or trade for guys. I think he's, and it's not to discredit Scott. I think, it's two ways of approaching kind of a rebuild in fantasy baseball. But I think, like you said, I think the star minimum is a concern because he's not even at 8 right now, which is the minimum, so he'll have to get at least there. And then while Connor could easily get to double digits even just through, whether that's guys on his own team or he's picking up guys midweek or trading, a Worcester, like a 20-25 third for like a mid, like an SP3, like a back end rotation guy. So I think we're gonna go with a sweep there on Connor. It'll be interesting to see though. In the last matchup, Cody, the Bowling Green Hot Rods, taking on the Oklahoma City Dodgers. What a rough stretch for Chad. I mean, I guess he wants to lose, so maybe he wants to play, the top dogs every week. So he officially locks in that number 1 overall pick. Bracton thought that Chad was gonna, keep it close to me. I mean, I respect the kind of diversion, but what are we thinking this week for him against Cody?
Two teams, different directions. I'm sure Cody's team isn't pleased about what happened this past week. Again, I think Chad's controlling the board in youth next 3 years, but for this week, give me Cody by quite a large amount. At least, again for this current week at least.
I don't even think, no offense, Chad. In my opinion, Chad can care less about winning this week.
Yeah, that's right.
I think Chad's big on just getting his guys traded and for assets, which is 1,000% exactly what I would be doing in his situation with how he's controlling the draft. He's playing with house money. He can do whatever he wants to do. Cody's going to be pissed off. He's going to pull out his inner Kenny Powers, and he's not going to be out. Chad's going to be fucking out. Pardon my language. So Chad's in. Chad's not going to get a W. Cody's going all Kenny Powers, and the Mexican says Bowling Green in a romp.
Yeah, I think Cody, although Chad does have Jake Berger and it's pretty enticing to pick him to win, Cody's going to win this convincingly. I think, this is kind of a statement game. This is kind of a good game for Cody to kind of get back on track. Obviously, he's still, in position to win a title, but dropping to the 3 seed, losing in pretty tough fashion, devastating fashion to Jon Heite. I think this is a good week to kind of bounce back, a bit of a tune-up game, and, I think the Hot Rods are going to be rolling once again. And, that's all for me. If you guys have any final thoughts or words you'd like to say?
Yeah, so for me, obviously, I'm very proud of at least my team for this past week against Cody. I do think, though, that now after this week, Cody's going to rip off like 8 to 10 wins straight after. I'm fully expecting that. I think the Hot Rods are really going to just start murdering some people after that one. Glad I don't have to probably see him again until the playoffs. But I definitely think this week's going to be a lot more active in the trade market. There's a lot of things that have to be addressed by multiple teams that we talked about throughout this show tonight. Again, for me, I'm excited to play against Paul. I'm very once again after doing a week 1 matchup with him already, and I'm excited to be back here this time next week.
Yeah, I can say the same thing. I actually played Cody the 2-week All-Star break matchup, so I'm not looking forward to getting like 5 Spencer Strider starts against me. But it's going to be another great week. Really, really enjoy this league. I was very, very hesitant at first about adding another league. When I first was approached about coming in, very glad I did. I enjoy this league immensely. It's very competitive, and like I said, it's a chore each and every week. Usually somebody's going to give you a run for the money, no matter how good or bad the record is. Great group of owners. I do believe, like I said, like you said, John, Cody's going to make a run. I think he's going to trade off some pieces, acquire some pieces. I think he's going, like I said, he's going to be pissed off, and I'm not looking forward to playing him here in the next couple of weeks. Also, I'm not looking forward to playing him this week. Should be a great battle, and like I said, if I'm not careful, I could lose 2 or 3 in a row here and put myself in the not so good 4 seed. I think we got to look in the playoffs. You want to get in that 2 or 3 seed, try to avoid you. No disrespect to the other teams, as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a Dawkins duel Tita. And I have to ask for the viewers at home, what was the Mexican food you had?
It was a good chicken and rice and shrimp bowl.
Ooh.
Sounds delectable.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I think, obviously, just the nature of this league, we're going to get some active trades. I think Cody could be someone who could definitely, a performance like that, he realizes, maybe he needs to do a little bit of a retooling or reshuffling of the deck. But I think that'll do it for us. Tita gives the sign of approval for his Mexican chicken rice shrimp bowl. It was me, Ryan Hendog, joined alongside Jon Heite and Tita. For next week, stay tuned for week 12 of the Based on Ball podcast at the same time next week here at the Johnny Lee Memorial League. Have a nice night. Have a nice week. Take care and stay safe.